Gotta have to move myself. Hi guys, welcome to the Lifted Book Festival brought to you by Lifted United. Today we have an amazing panel for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over because this is who you came to see. So if you have any comments, questions, please put them in the comments section and we'll be happy to try to get to you as soon as possible. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over. Welcome.
Welcome. Well, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are joining from, possibly good evening. So excited to be here with you today with these amazing authors. I'm going to go around and let each of them introduce themselves very briefly before we jump right into the questions. But first, I'll introduce myself. My name is Charnaie Gordon. I am also an author. I wrote my first book back in 2021, and fast forward to today, I think I have 7 children's books. So super excited to be here with you all. So I'm gonna kind of kick it off, and we're gonna start, I guess, up at the top. We'll go right to you, Djeli. When I say the top, I'm talking about the top of my screen. Djeli, you are up in the top left-hand corner of my screen, and then we'll just kind of go this way. So I'll call each person. But first, Djeli, if you want to introduce yourself and let everybody know a little bit about you.
Sure. Thanks for having me here. I'm P. Djeli Clark. I'm a speculative fiction writer. Mostly I write adult fantasy and sci-fi, but recently I've also written some books that have crossed over for younger readers, and I wrote my first middle grade book, fantasy book, recently was published this past summer. I live in New England, so it's afternoon where I am, other side of the coast. When I'm not doing this, I'm a professor of history.
Hey, great. All right. Melody, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hi, I'm Melody. I'm the co-editor of Writing in Color, which is a nonfiction anthology, and I'm also a young adult sci-fi writer. And it's really exciting to be on this panel with this talented roster we've got, and especially Alechia, I see you, I love you, so it's really cool to be on a panel with you. Just had to say that. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, awesome. Lakita?
Hi, my name is Lakita Wilson, and I've had some technical difficulties, but I'm here, and I am a professor of education in Maryland. I write middle grade for children and young adults, and I'm working on a picture book.
Yay. All right, Olugbemisola?
Hi, I'm Olugbemisola, Rude Perkovich, and I write everything from picture books up through most recently a young adult novel. I live in New York City, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Alechia?
So hello, I am Alechia Dow. I am the author of a lot, 3 young adult sci-fi books, 3 middle grades, and another fantasy YA that's coming out in 2026.
Okay, awesome. Now we do have Ty Allen Jackson with us as well, but for some reason he has disappeared off the screen. Ty, are you still there? I'm not sure if you can still hear us. Okay. I think Ty is, hopefully he'll be back. But Ty Allen Jackson, another amazing author, author of the I want to get it right, Danny Dollar, I believe. He does this whole financial series, but he is amazing, and hopefully he will be joining us here soon as well, and he can introduce himself. But right now we are going to jump right into it. And I just want to have a conversation with you guys. And we're really just talking about books, right? Books, writing and reading, all things that we love. And hopefully everyone who is at this conference also loves if you are here today. So let's start with, I'll go with you first, Lakita. And this question, we'll just kind of go around the table with this question. Were all of you avid readers as children? And did you have a favorite book growing up? So, starting with you, Lakita.
Sure. I always like to say that that books were probably my first best friend because I was not shy at home, but like terribly shy and an introvert outside of the house. And so I could get really, really lost in books. And I started, and like my parents were reading to me from, before I can remember. So like I always had a book in my hand. One of the first books I remember reading was Charlotte's Web. And so like I always like felt like that was a classic for me. And then the I really loved the Ramona series because I felt like that was the first time a child just she wasn't just this prim and proper and well-mannered child, but like she felt like the kids that I knew, but I was still searching for brown children like me. And so I want to say like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry was like one of my favorites, like because we had read it as a school. I was like reading ahead when I wasn't supposed to, reading in my desk. And so that sort of got me started on that journey of just loving like Black characters.
Okay, thank you for that. Before we go to the next person, Ty, I just want to catch you up. Welcome. We just went around first and everybody briefly introduced themselves. I kind of said a little bit about you, but I want to give you the chance to introduce yourself as well, please.
Thank you kindly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So my name is Ty Allen Jackson. I'm a very proud indie author. I've been an indie author for close to 15 years now. I've sold over 250,000 books independently, and my books have been featured on Good Morning America, The Today Show, Disney Plus. I recently received an honorary doctorate for my work in promoting literacy, having done 3 TED Talks about the importance of literacy. And my books have been turned into plays, musicals, and is currently the foundation of a financial literacy program run by the Federal Reserve titled Daddy Dollar Academy.
Amazing. Okay. So Ty, another thing, we just kind of started. The first question I'm going around asking everyone is, if you were an avid reader as a child, and also what was your favorite childhood book? And so since we're talking to you, you can just go ahead and answer, and then we'll go on to the next person.
Absolutely. So my favorite books, honestly, yes, I was a ferocious reader. My mother, who had me at a very young age, was wise enough to keep books everywhere in the house. But I gravitated to comic books. Those were really my very first memories of really sinking my teeth into literature, even though I read everything that you could imagine. But Spider-Man in particular was my favorite superhero. And the reason why is because, like me, Spider-Man was a kid. And so he was my most relatable character. Not to mention, he lived in Queens. I was from the Bronx. He loved science. I love science. He was awkward around girls. I'm still awkward around girls. So yeah, Spider-Man was my favorite superhero, but comic books by far was the thing that I gravitated to the most as a kid.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Olugbemisola, avid reader, favorite book as a child?
I was definitely an avid reader. Like Lakita, I was very shy, and we moved a lot. So I went to a different school for every grade up until 7th grade. So those books were definitely like my friends. I also was not allowed to watch very much TV. Like an hour a week of PBS. So, but I could read whatever I wanted. I really appreciate that. My family really encourages sort of free range reading. So I could read whatever was on the shelves. I could go to the library and take out a gazillion books. And that was a big deal for me as a child. And it's so hard for me to do a favorite book. I will say I know one of my first favorites was Honey, I Love by Eloise Greenfield. I used to read that one over and over, which is hilarious because it's poetry in verse, and I will never, ever, ever write poetry.
All right. Alicia, how about you?
So, unlike a lot of people here, my parents were not into reading and did not care about books at all. But I loved them. So I was at the library until like close date. I was there all the time. I lived there. I grew up there. That was my family. So I read a lot of Fear Street, like as many as I could, and Goosebumps. And then I really, really, really loved X-Men comics. I was really into those, and I would read as many as I could get. I was pretty sure that I was going to be a mutant at some point. And so now I just get to write about them.
Hey, Melody, how about you?
I've been thinking about my answer because I don't know what my favorite book was. But definitely an avid reader. I lived up the street from a library and I was always there. And my parents are both heavily in the arts, so they definitely push reading. And I was the one who gravitated towards it the most, I would say, of the three of us, me and my sisters. So yeah, I've loved reading forever. A couple people have mentioned comics. My dad is into comics. He's an illustrator. And so I've had comics constantly in my life. And I would say the ones that were constantly handed to me, other than Spider-Man, which was already mentioned, like Archie and stuff like that. So, but I also want to mention that for some reason, I just loved Amelia Bedelia. I have a lot of reasons why, but I can't pinpoint like one particular reason, but that is one series of books that really sticks out to me as far as being very impressionable at that age. So yeah.
Okay, great. And Djeli, how about you?
Yeah, I'm trying to, whenever you get these questions, like you're retconning, trying to remember what your life was like. So yeah, when I was younger, I was, ferocious reader, ferocious and voracious reader. My mom took us, my sister and I, to the library like almost, I would say, several times a week. And it wasn't just that we read books, like the library, this was in Staten Island in New York. You could go to the basement and they would show old movies. And so the library was just where I was at. If they were wondering where I was, I didn't come back by the street lights or whatever, they knew I was at the library till closing time, right? And so I think I was just reading everything possible. A lot of it was kids' books, so a lot of it was magical and fantasy, but a lot of it wasn't. I think I was also into the comics, but I got my comics from the library in the beginning, so that meant you just got whatever was there. You didn't actually read a story, you read the book, and then maybe you read another comic book that was set several years later, right? And so I never really read them continuously. It's just whatever was there. And it was so, I remember when I was younger, the comic books that blew me away, and I'm older here, so the Defenders, if anybody remembers them from way back in the day, the Legion of Superheroes, it was also Archie comics. It was just whatever was there. It wasn't until I, much later, started reading comics for myself that I became a big X-Men fan, for instance, and stuff like that. But as far as books, I'm trying to remember the ones that really stuck with me. Definitely like The Mouse and the Motorcycle. Love those kinds of books from when I was younger. Loved the Wrinkle in Time books, Madeline L'Engle's books. Those were probably some of my favorite books, right? I just felt that they were these fantasy books. That's what I was into, but they kind of spoke to I felt like it was speaking to me as if I was older, even though I was reading really small. Read all the Narnia books. Did not get any of the religious symbolism in it when I was younger. It was just a lion, and that was it. That was it. Loved all those books. And loved the Earthsea books. Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea books, and really liked them because they had these black and brown characters in them. Even though the cover tried to, fake me out with whitewashed covers, I still knew what I read. And so, yeah, those were my favorite.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting how, as I'm listening to all of your answers, I heard Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Djeli, you just said something about black and brown characters. But everybody else's answers pretty much, Ramona and Beezus, we probably all grew up reading books that didn't feature characters mostly that look like us, right? Most of the books that we read probably as children didn't have characters in them that look like us. And so I am so excited for my children and the future generations they'll be able to answer that question a little bit differently, hopefully. I know my kids will, right? So I'm always just fascinated when I hear writers answer that question about like favorite childhood books. So hopefully, we going forward, children will be able to say different books that are, written by Black authors and books that they actually see themselves in. So thank you all for answering that question. And I can answer too. And so for me, much like Alechia, I didn't grow up in a household where reading was prioritized. So I gravitated towards reading. And then my favorite books like Lakita were the Ramona and Beezus books. But I also, my favorite book of all time, childhood book of all time is Corduroy, and by Don Freeman. And really only because the little girl in there, Lisa, she looked like me. She wore her hair like me. She lived in an apartment building like me growing up. So I always loved that book. Okay. So for the next couple of questions, we don't have to do like the round the table unless you guys want to. But I'm thinking whoever just wants to jump in, maybe we can take like one or two people. We can just do it that way. All right. So we are all Black authors here. How does representation, culture, and identity play a role, if at all, in your writing? How does representation, culture, and identity play a role in your writing, if at all? So whoever wants to answer that.
I can answer.
Okay.
I feel like I think about that a lot because I like even when I was answering that first question, I made sure to mention like a Black book because I felt like when I was younger, it was like if you were doing a classroom read aloud, it was a white book, and I wasn't afforded the opportunity to read a Black book with a Black character as a class until the 5th grade. And I'm like, okay, but I'm in a predominantly Black city. So it did not make any sense to me. And I tried to look at my own experiences and incorporate that, like my version of Blackness, because I know that being Black is so different depending on what region you grew up in, what generation you grew up in. And so I don't worry about like my characters being a lot of different versions of Black, because I have faith that there will be like other Black authors that will give their version. So that's how I think about it. I just look at my own experiences pretty much.
Okay. You take one more person if anybody else wants to answer that.
Well, I'd like to say that, it's interesting the answers that were given in the beginning about the type of books that we really loved. And from Ramona to Narnia to a couple of others that were mentioned, they were all predominantly white characters. And I think the reason why we gravitated to those books is because they were fun, because they made us feel good. They weren't heavy, they weren't cultural, they weren't historical, they were just fun. And I think that's what's tremendously missing in the world of literature today when it's come from authors of color, is that we're continuously putting our Black stories into the ether, and generally only Black voices, our ears are hearing them. And so I think it's more important that we have characters that are much broader than just our skin color and just our race, that are just having fun, so that they are the Ramonas of today, so that they are, that kids can pick up today and not have to read about the hair and the skin and the plight. And I'm not saying those books aren't relevant. It just seems that they're very often the only space we seem to take up is that space. And we have to do a better job of creating characters that are just broad and fun-loving, and the Ramonas of today that make us laugh, that inspire us, that everyone can see themselves in, so that little white kids are saying, like you're saying about Ramona, little white kids and Latinas and Asians are looking at our characters and go, that was my favorite book because she made me smile and she made me laugh. Not because she was Black, but just because she was a kid who just happens to be Black.
Yeah. Like, I want to touch upon that because I just had an experience with this published children's book called Etta Extraordinaire. and it's about a little Black girl. Well, it's about a little girl who just happens to be Black, right? But she also she loves tea parties. She loves singing and dancing, right? And performing and stuff like that. And so I co-wrote this book with another author, Rhoda Ahmed. And when Rhoda and I started thinking about this character, I thought of the character, and then we decided to collaborate on it together. But I was like, you know what? I just want like a little brown girl who's kind of like a Fancy Nancy, but she's Etta, right? And so it was published, the book is published by HarperCollins, and HarperCollins also published Fancy Nancy. So they are the publishers of Fancy Nancy. And so when we went to them with the idea, they loved it, but they said, but wait, we already have Fancy Nancy. And we're like, okay, so here's Etta, right? What's the problem? And we got a lot of pushback on how we wanted Etta to be. And we got a lot of pushback from the publisher because they were like, she's a little too much like Fancy Nancy. Like, we just have to be very careful. And we're like, okay, well, does Fancy Nancy own the copyright of playing dress up and wearing her mom's oversized shoes? You know, like there was a lot of conversation, a lot of back and forth, and we got a lot of pushback from the publisher because Fancy Nancy already exists. And so, you know, it was just this interesting process. We had to fight for a lot of the things that we wanted, because this white character already exists who already dominates that space in a way. And so it was just interesting to deal with that because it was this constant like fight, like we're fighting against Fancy Nancy, but it's like, no, this is Etta. Like she can be fancy too, you know? And so, yeah, we just wanted a fun loving little Black character who just happened to be sort of similar to Fancy Nancy, but they was like, no. So, you know, I don't know if anybody else has had that experience or a similar experience, but that is real. You are fighting with the publishers against these white characters who already dominate the space.
I think for me also, I'm always writing, you know, like a lot of times you'll have a story problem or your main character has a problem. And the problem in my writing is never their Blackness. So I'm never going to write that Blackness itself is the problem. And it was actually Djeli Madeline Langle who, in a workshop years and years and years ago, talked about whatever you write, who you are is going to come through. So who you are, your experience, which is like, as Lakita said, we've had so many different experiences as Black people. And there's such a wide, beautiful variety of ways of living across the diaspora that we can all kind of share in so many different ways. It's going to come through and can come through without Blackness being the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So since we're talking about like problems and issues, and then we'll get into like some more fun stuff. Did any of you have any challenges that you encountered while writing or publishing your first book or current book? And if so, like how did you overcome them? Who wants to take that one? Okay, Alechia.
So when I was starting out, I just kind of had this attitude of I'm going to do whatever I want and I will do it until somebody says no. And that was the experience with The Sound of Stars, where I got really lucky and somebody was like, okay, you can do this. And so I kind of had it going in for like that way for sci-fi, where I was like, I'm going to go completely off the rails and do whatever I want. And maybe somebody's going to say no, and then maybe I'll have that conversation. But now 7 book deals in, I'm having all of the challenges where I cannot get a yes anymore, where it's, okay, well, this character can't be Black, fat, queer, can't be any of the, like, you have to pick one. And now I'm facing like, okay, well, where do I go? Like, I'm not going to stop writing these characters this way. So it's obviously a publishing problem. But then now I'm stuck, and it's really, really scary. And I don't know the way to push back on it because I hadn't encountered that so much before, where it used to be a little bit more approachable. And I had people who were on my team who were like, yeah, I want to see what you're going to do with this. But now it's like the opposite. And I feel like this is something that's happening in the industry. And I think other people can talk about this because it seems like the industry has swung in a different direction than where it was when I started. And like, I think I sold in 2017, 2018. So since then, it's been a lot more complicated. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that, but that's what I'm facing.
Okay. Anybody else have any issues or things that they overcame in publishing books?
So when I first became an author with no aspirations of ever writing a children's book, but when the opportunity presented itself to write a children's book about financial literacy, when I was done with my manuscript, I literally submitted my manuscript to 147 agents and publishers and was rejected by everyone. I started my own publishing company, and in the first 2 months, I sold 2,000 copies just hustling and knocking on doors. Up to this point, I've sold about 160,000 copies of this particular book. And I quickly realized that the world of publishing wanted nothing to do with me. The world of book selling wanted nothing to do with me. So I asked myself a really simple question, and maybe this is a question you can ask yourself, Alicia. And it was a real simple question that I had to ask. And it was like, ultimately, who do I want my books into the hands of? Do I want them into the hands of publishers? Do I want them in the hands of booksellers? Do I want them in the hands of bookstores? No. Ultimately, I want my books into the hands of children. Where are children? Children are in schools. They're in youth organizations, boys and girls clubs, YMCAs, daycare centers. And because my book's about financial literacy, I knocked on every bank, credit union, financial institution, anything and everything that had to do with money or books, or children rather. I knocked on their door. And that's how I've been, without having my books in bookstores, been able to sell so many books because I go directly to there. So I ask you to ask yourself, where's your audience? And how do you build that relationship and connection with them to be able to foster this relationship where they find your books or message or just viewpoint of value?
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Does anybody here have a banned book or banned books that are on, like, any of your books are banned currently?
Yeah.
Lakita? Anybody
Yeah.
else? Anybody else? Banned books? No? All right.
I have a short story that's banned right now in Texas, but that's it.
Okay. Yeah. Lakita, how are you kind of navigating or dealing with that, having one of your books banned?
The book that is banned is probably the book you would think would be banned. It's the What is Black Lives Matter book, because that, gets a lot of pushback from the people who like to ban books. So, but the thing about that, like for me, is because it is part of a big brand. Like my name is like this small on the book, and like the actual brand is at the top. It doesn't, it's probably like my highest selling book. So like it's not in Florida, but like it's other places. I've found a bigger challenge with trying to sell just my books that represent like Black joy, honestly. So Alicia, I hear you. Trust me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about writing. Like when you are getting ready to write a book, does anybody have any sort of like habits or rituals, meditations? Like how do you kind of get yourself in the mood to start writing? Anybody want to take that one?
Well,
I've never called.
Oh, go ahead.
No, after you, please.
And
I prefer writing during the day, but if I can't write during, like I usually am an early riser, and years ago, I joined the like 5 a.m. Writers Club on Twitter. That's only for people who actually wake up early. You don't have to go out of your way to do that. But if I'm up, I might as well write. And I feel like it's just so, I don't know, magical being able to write fictional stories before people around me are up. It feels, I don't know, there's something special about that. But if I'm not able to write in the morning, then it is something that I kind of have to force myself to do, because if I don't get it done first thing and I've, done my day job stuff, sometimes you just want to do nothing when you get home from work. And so that's kind of finding that routine is hard after a long day of doing what you have to do. But at the end of the day, you have to think about what is more important. Do you really want to finish that story, or do you want to rest? And rest is very important. I've had COVID twice before, so I know that rest is important. So it's really just about balancing and prioritizing what you want to get done. So yeah.
Okay. I know there were a couple of people who started to chime in. Who else wants to go?
I was also part of the 5 a.m. Writers Club, so hi, friend. I've noticed that, well, not noticed, but I started to take it a little further. And when I'm in the drafting phase, because that's like the most difficult part for me, I switch my schedule entirely, which I could not have done this if my children were not adults. But like what I do is I go to bed around like 7, so I'll probably be like sleeping a few hours, and I try to get up at like 2 a.m. and then write when the world sleeps, because like I'm not one of those people that can like start writing at midnight, like after I've been up all day. I need sleep. And then so I just like I go to sleep really early, get up really early, and my phone is less likely to ring and interrupt me.
Okay. Anybody
I
else?
want to echo the waking up extra early. I did a lot of my writing at 3, 4 in the morning, but I introduced myself to classical music. I'm a huge jazz fan, but I don't know why it didn't work for me. There's something about classical music that totally transports me, empties my mind, and just takes me away. I don't know what that's about. There's no other form of genre of music that does it for me. But you put on some classical, and for whatever reason, I am the most creative I've ever been.
Okay, love it.
I'm an early person too. And I have learned over the years, like when my daughter was younger, I had to just really write when I could. So just like find little pockets of time. And so I think when I was starting out and like people would have very set routines, like, oh, I write for 3 hours a day, or, oh, I do 3 chapters every day. And I would try to follow other people's plans. And what I learned was that I just have to do what is working for me at the time. So I have to also be flexible about that. And also I love writing in public libraries in New York. I love writing at all the different branches. That's a fun thing. And I write by hand, usually when I'm drafting. So I do that when I'm out. And then when I'm home is when I usually do, when I'm working on the computer.
That is so interesting, the writing by hand. I love that. Okay. All right. So we're going to, let's switch gears. And I want to just talk about your current books for each of you. Why don't you tell us what is your latest book, or something that you're currently writing, and what it's about, so that people can get to know a little bit more about your books and some of the characters that you write about. We'll start with you, Djeli, at the top, please.
Yeah, sure. As I said, most of my work is adult fiction, but recently stepping into middle grade I think it came out in July. My first novel in middle grade is a novel called The Benny Song. And it's basically a middle grade fantasy novel about a young girl in this secondary world society that's very influenced by West African as well as Central African and African diaspora cultures. And she's from a small village and she doesn't know anything about the outside world until, of course, something rips her out of that, which has to do with her entire village becoming attacked and her family getting stolen away. And so it's sort of a found family type of story, but as well as this kind of epic type of middle grade story, that the type that I liked when I was younger. And so finished that one, working on book 2 because it's a trilogy. So book 2 book covers out, working on edits, and I think that one comes out next year in 2025.
Awesome. All right. How about you, Melody?
So Writing in Color is the anthology that I co-edited, and it's basically for any at any stage of writing you're at. If you're an aspiring writer, if you're already published, if you've published one book, if you published 10, it's still really great. It's a compilation of essays by BIPOC authors who are mainly kid-lit authors, but also write outside of that age category as well. And it's basically just talking about all the struggles we face in the industry and how we overcome them. So I'm really proud of the essays that are in the book. It's in two parts. The first part is more so writing and craft, and then the second part is more so the business. And we've got an essay on imposter syndrome. We've got an essay on writing in your mother tongue and then translating it to English. So there's a lot of good stuff in that anthology. And I'm not just saying that because my name is attached. I would have loved to have read it if I wasn't even involved in it. So yeah, definitely pick that up if you get a chance.
Hey, Alicia?
Okay, so hold on. I have them here. These are my 2023 books. Song of Salvation and Just a Pinch of Magic. YA sci-fi. This is middle grade fantasy. My next book comes out in June, which I co-authored with Tracy Wadua, and it is about an attempted murder at a cookie competition, and it is called The Cookie Crumbles. The second one in that series comes out next year. I want to say summer. And then as you can see from my disheveled hair, I try to put a headband on so you can't see how bad it is. I am in the middle of my cave right now because I have a book, the 2026 book, which is about Whitney Houston in the Cinderella version.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that I'm kind of doing a black fat fairy, and it's really, really funny. It's a romance fantasy, and that's coming out with Macmillan in 2026, and I am in the process of revising that right now, and it's on my brain, but it is really, really goofy and fun. So I have a lot of stuff coming up.
Is that middle grade?
No, that is young adult.
Young adult. Okay, great. Olugbemisola?
So I just had a young adult novel called You're Breaking My Heart released earlier this month, and that's about a girl who blames herself for her brother's death. And it's about grief and how it messes with your memory and how the stories that we tell ourselves aren't always true. And then later this spring, I have the second in a series of easy readers coming out. Makeda Makes a Home for Subway. And Lakita is a second grader, and in this book, she brings the class guinea pig home for the weekend, and she decides his cage is boring, so she's gonna jazz it up and give him some fun. And I'm working on Operation Sisterhood 2, and I'm working on a stage adaptation of one of my books, I'll say.
Yay! Oh, I love my daughter. My daughter's gonna be so excited about Operation
Good.
Sisterhood too. She loved the first one. So
Thank
when
you.
is that coming out?
That will be out in January.
Okay, I'll tell her. Okay, Lakita?
So my most recent book that came out was Sparkle, and it's a middle grade about a girl with alopecia. Actually for the last 10 years, I suffer from hair loss. It just comes in and out. And I was supposed to be writing a middle grade about something else, and my hair kept falling out, and I was preoccupied with that. I was like, screw it. The plot now changes. Now it's going to be about alopecia. And my hair is just fell out until it was time for release, and it grew back. And I was like, really? And so it's falling out again. But I did not see any books about alopecia, and so I wanted that representation because I was looking for books about it. Be Real Macy Weaver was my first middle grade book, and that musical opening night is Saturday, so I get to travel, see it. And I have a YA Last Chance Dance. And in summer of 2025, I have a book, a YA novel about Prince George's County, which is where I'm from. For a really long time, we were the richest Black county in the United States for like Black people. But I lived in the poorest section, and so I've gotten to see so many Black people like thrown together in schools and social gatherings, and like I wanted to show what happens when you are mixing all these socioeconomic backgrounds together, and also what happens when parents start out in one tax bracket, and now they have like risen to another, and it's like, what responsibility do you have to like look back? So like we don't even have a title, but we're almost at copy edits, so it'll be out summer 2025.
Okay. And Ty.
So my most recent book, which came out a little more than a year ago, is titled Make Your Own Money. What technically the title is Make Your Own Money, How Kids Can Earn It, Save It, Spend It, and Dream Big by Danny Dollar. Yes, I know, very long title. But this book has been really amazing and has really inspired children around the world to learn about finance and entrepreneurship. And one of the great byproducts of this book was that 2 years ago, I launched, based off of this book, the Danny Dollar Entrepreneur Fair. The premise is exactly like a science fair, except instead of kids demonstrating on how a light bulb lights or how a volcano erupts, they're showcasing their ideas for a business. And we launched it 2 years ago with 50 students in Massachusetts. There will be over 3,000 students that participated this year so far in 6 different states. And so I absolutely expect the Danny Dollar Entrepreneur Fair to become a household name in the next 5 years. So look for it in a elementary school, middle school near you.
Awesome. All right. I know we got some, I just saw the thing about questions coming up. So while people are getting their questions ready, I will go ahead and answer 2 for myself. So I have Edda Extraordinaire, the companion book, which is coming out. It's called Edda Extraordinaire Goes to the White House. That's coming out in September 2026. September of this year, September 2024 of this year. I have an educational flashcard series for children coming out with Barnes & Noble. That'll be out January 2025. For the first set, they bought 2 sets. So the first one will be like a Black History set of flashcards with a little small booklet that goes with it. And then the second set will be an Asian American Pacific Islander set, which will probably come out in May. Like we're trying to time it for like Asian American Pacific Islander month in May. So that will probably come out like somewhere around April or May 2026 or 2025. I'm not sure which one yet. Yeah, and I just signed a contract for a book. I don't know if I could say much about it, but it will be a picture book. So I'm just super excited about that one as well. Okay. So I think we got to everybody. Do we have any questions? I'm not sure. I see it says we will answer some audience questions at the end. So
yeah.
Do you guys want to start answering
There's
questions?
one from Melody.
Perfect.
What's that? I'm sorry, I missed the first question is for Melody. Okay. Melody, how do you pitch an anthology to agents? I pitched one during DV Pit, I'm not sure what that is, to no success. Any tips?
Well, me and Nafisa already had agents. So, and Nafisa is an accomplished author. She has 2 or 3 books already out. So her agent had already had relationships with the publishers that we were interested in submitting to. And my agent at the time was with New Leaf Literary. And so they have great connections. And so since we were already both agented and both of our agents had people in mind that they wanted to submit to, that was just a traditional submission process for us. I would say if you are not yet agented, it might be a bit harder to get authors on board because you do have to get authors on board first to say yes, they'll contribute. And then if they do decide to contribute, sometimes that might even fall through depending on the scheduling once you do get the deal. So there's a lot of logistics involved in anthology. So I would say if you want to do an anthology, in your unagented, I think you might be better off just getting your group of writer friends together and putting it out. You can self-publish. I was actually a part of a self-published anthology by, it was edited by Mindy McGinnis and a few other people. So you can have it self-published or you can have it traditionally published. But either way, you definitely want to get those authors on board first and obviously have your idea to pitch them. So you're pitching authors and then you got to pitch the publishers. So it's not very easy. It's a lot more no's than just, submitting one book to that you've written by yourself to agents. You get a lot of no's from other authors, but you also get a lot of yeses. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there.
Okay, thank you for that, Melody. Did we have any more questions from the audience? I think they were just popping up on the screen.
Yes, I'm going to send another one to you guys.
Okay. All right. So how do you decide the personalities of your characters? I think it looks like it might be cut off a little bit, but I think the general question, how do you decide the personalities of your characters? Anybody want to take that?
I will say that some characters come to me kind of fully imagined, and sometimes I have to put them on hold because they're not right for a particular story that I'm writing, and then other times it's perfect. But if they're not as fully fleshed out as I want them to be, then that means that I need to pick up Story Genius and read that and fill out my plot and understand the reasoning for my plot, and then understanding how my character fits into that and the most compelling way to have a specific character involved in that. And so sometimes my main character energy it evolves from what is needed from the plot and how that character fights back against it, obviously to create that conflict. So yeah, it's kind of either or. They either come to me or I do have to work at it.
Okay, great. Anybody else want to answer that?
So Picasso once said, "Good artists borrow, great artists steal." And I have two books that I totally stole the characters from characters that inspired me as a kid. Family Ties was a great sitcom back in the 80s. I see you, my sisters, who remember that. And Alex and his sister Mallory had this very cantankerous relationship. Alex was very financially savvy, and she was a hot mess spending her money and everything. My book, Danny Dollar, him and his sister are those two characters. I literally just kind of repurposed those characters and made them my own in my own contemporary fun way. And in my superhero book, The Super Duper Kid, I took that sibling rivalry concept again with the sitcom What's Happening, where Raj and Dee and his sister also had this really knucklehead relationship. And the main character and his sister absolutely has that same type of relationship. In fact, there's a kind of an Easter egg in there where the sister catches the main character doing something, and he goes, "Ooh, I'm telling mama." And if you know what's happening, you know how prominent that line is. So I just say, think of the characters that meant something to you, who you remember in such vivid ways, and then just repurpose them and make them your own. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Sometimes you just take something that meant something to you and make it your own.
Yes, absolutely. I see a question here in the chat. There it is. Okay. and I think the perfect person to answer this is probably Ty, but I'm gonna say it. What do you think is the best way to approach growing a social media following as an author?
I have literally done professional development classes on this because I think many people who are looking to grow their following get it wrong and make it solely about the book. And I think it's so important to know that we follow people, not things. And so it's important to kind of put yourself out there. You don't know the production company of Beyonce, but you know Beyonce. You know what I mean? You don't know the production company of Will Smith, but you know Will Smith. I think it's important to put yourself out there as much as you can. I know some people are uncomfortable in that space, but I think, letting people into your lives allows people to kind of grow with you. In addition to that, the why you created this book in the first place. And I think a lot of people miss that. Like, you talk about your books and your character, but why did you do it? And if you, and there are just sections of people who have your exact same why, which brings me to my next point is just following as many people in your genre and your why as possible, building relationships with them, supporting them in their efforts, because you'll find in turn that sometimes they will support you in yours. And also just have fun. Don't take it too seriously. Social media is made for us all to look goofy. And just allow yourself to be vulnerable and have fun with the space. Those are just some of my tips to be able to grow a decent following.
Okay, awesome. And are there any more questions?
I believe that's it, guys. I believe that's it for all the questions in the audience that we can take in this time limit.
Okay.
So here, let me.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
If you want to go ahead and send everybody off, you're more than welcome.
Okay, great. One more question. It's mine. Okay.
Wait, no, you have another question?
Oh, me? Oh, no, sorry.
No,
I thought
our time is up.
Oh, okay. Okay, our time is up. Okay, got you. I saw somebody's typing in the chat. It says one more question. It's mine, so I'm not sure. But I think our time is
first of all, I just want to say thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody to share your experiences. I know it's a bit of a packed panel, so not everyone had a lot of time to express, but I do feel like the audience got a great idea of what it's like in this industry and some of the struggles that are happening currently right now for authors. And I just want to say thank you to the moderator. She did a fantastic job. If you guys want to hang around, the next panel is going to be starting at 12. And if you guys want to, we'll go into the green room and you want to chat and have a little farewell with each other, you can. Everybody that's watching, please just hold on. We'll have a little intermission before the 12 o'clock panel starts, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Are you putting us in the green room? Oh.
I don't know if let's see.
It looks like she's doing it one by one, maybe.
Oh, okay. I was like,